everyone. Thanks and welcome to another episode of TechTalk Dudes. Today we talking about Windows Hello, in particular talking about Windows Hello for business in a hybrid scenario. And today Pim and I have a special guest, and that's Prakar Srivastava. Welcome, Prakar. Pokar is working for Microsoft as a program manager, and he's owning the Windows Hello for Business feature. So great to have you, Pokar. Perhaps you can briefly introduce yourself before we go into the details of Windows Hello for Business, in particular on what Windows Hello for Business Cloud Trust has to offer.
Yeah. So hello, I'm Prakhar. Nice to meet you, Ronnie and Pim. I'm the PM for Windows Hello for Business. It's been great being the product owner for Windows Hello for Business. You get to see the view of identity, passwordless, security, a mix of everything. So certainly a very exciting place. And I'm equally excited to talk to you folks about Cloud Trust, Windows Hello for Business, and things in that bucket of things. Other than that, we can talk as well.
Okay. Thanks for your introduction, and it's very nice to have you on the call. Maybe it's good to start with a short introduction into what Windows Hello for Business actually is.
Yeah. Windows Hello for Business, the way it's just like put together, right? You have Windows Hello, and then there is something for business. So I really want to first talk about Windows Hello, and then we'll talk about what's for business. Obviously, we don't like passwords. They're weak. They can be leaked, stolen. Historical crypto algorithms, authentication protocols may not survive modern attacks. Storage, you just know there are a lot of problems with passwords. I just don't need to get into it. Pretty much, I think in recent times I was reading about 84 or 86% of passwords worldwide are already leaked. So you can understand the scale of the problem. Right? So we want to move away from passwords, and the next best thing that is easy to use for users, you don't have to remember a password and still sort of binds strong auth principles for multi-factor, is biometrics. If we can use biometrics plus some device localized information and associate that with the user, we have one up against passwords in a huge front. And so that is, in short, Windows Hello. That says we will rely on user information, biometrics, and the device to authenticate the user. Authenticate, I want to put it in air quotes because it's different for different means. And that is where the for business comes in. Businesses have a completely different view of authentication. Right? You are authenticating not only to your device, but you're authenticating to an enterprise so that you can access resources. And that's the most important aspect of for business. Where do your resources lie? How do you get access to those resources? And what protocols are implemented in that path so that your identity is authenticated, right? Yeah. So that, in my mind, is Windows Hello for Business that merges user biometrics, localized device information, plus resource accesses on an enterprise scale.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then
I should mention all of this is like cryptographically bound and strong auth protocols and everything.
Yeah, it's like, as I always say, it's like a trust between the user, the device, and in this example with for business, the Azure AD. Right. So the user knows the PIN, the private key is stored on the machine, the public key is written into the Azure AD. If I try to log on with that same PIN or face recognition or fingerprint on a different computer, it doesn't accept because the private key is missing on that particular device. Yeah. So that way it's more secure because shoulder surfacing, you can still do shoulder surfacing, but you still need to have the actual device where you did the enrollment on.
Yeah.
By default, we can, of course, enable Windows Hello for Business on cloud connected devices like hybrid Azure AD joined or Azure AD joined devices. Then it works primarily for those resources which are connected to the cloud.
Yeah.
But what about going hybrid? So when do I need to go hybrid? Why should I do that?
Great question. So the whole idea of cloud resources, I would say, is still new in the enterprise world. There have been enterprises existing much longer than I have been alive. Right? They have historically used passwords and they've had on-prem resources. Right? And I want to stress about this fact that their data, their code, whatever they are working on is stored on on-prem servers. Right? And they have implemented their own authentication stack. In this new world where we are moving towards cloud and resources are available on cloud, you have apps and services that can scale throughout the world. You get the benefit of security, flexibility, ease of use, and all the goodness about cloud. So really now what we're seeing is a mix of a place where resources are bucketed both either on cloud or on-prem. Also, there is a transition between resources that is moving from on-prem servers onto cloud, right? So in that sense, this is what we call hybrid, that you have certain resources that are on-prem, and there are certain resources that are on cloud, and you as a user want access to both those sides of resources, but obviously you do not want to have two identities attached and authentication streams that need you to log in twice, right? So that's the hybrid model that we're talking about, is make it simpler for the user and enterprises where they can get access to both on-prem cloud resources with the same authentication that they would do. Plus, if we can bring in stronger auth with Windows Hello, as you said, bio or a PIN plus the private key on that device, if you can use that information, is the perfect combination.
Yeah, so in simple words, it's hybrid is for to expand your Windows Hello for Business cloud deployment to on-premises as well, and preventing for end user authentication problems.
Yeah.
Very complex, of a very simple, very simply explained.
Now we have explained the various scenarios. We are facilitating this by a couple of deployment scenarios, Prakar. For example, we do have certificate trust model and the key trust model. These comes with particular requirements, infrastructure setups. And recently, and that's also the reason why we have this recording, is Microsoft introduced the Cloud Trust deployment scenario. Can you explain a bit more what the advantages are of the Cloud Trust model over the current Key Trust and the Certificate Trust models?
Yeah. So before I jump to Cloud Trust, I really want to sort of take a step back and talk about how authentication works in one of these models for hybrids, right? So as I said, you have certain resources on cloud and you have certain resources on-prem. And let's say I want to log in into my Windows machine and get access to both these resources. So the moment you log in using Windows Hello, let me first talk about key trust, and then I'll touch upon certificate trust as well. So in both these cases, what happens is we'll first go to Azure AD and say, hey, here is my user information. We have the Cloud AP protocol inbuilt that says, here, I'm going to go and talk to Azure AD. Azure AD is going to say, yes, I recognize this user. Here is your token that you can now use to access Azure resources. And then subsequently, we'll also go and talk to domain controllers on-prem and say, here is my user information, and I'm implementing the Kerberos protocol. Let's handshake, and you give me the tokens, DGTs, and then I can go and access resources. So this is key trust that says you have some key information. You need a local cert, but you have key information that you can exchange. Great. Certificate trust, we take a step up and say, hey, we can maybe simplify this chain. And if you have a cert, we will rely on that cert for authentication purposes, right? You don't have to register your keys. So both these models work today. Great. There's rarely you can deploy them today. But what we have seen is with Key Trust, which was supposed to be a simpler deployment model for certificate trust, did not need you to have a CA or had required you to configure your CA a bit differently. It sort of introduced certain changes that while we were designing, we thought that were acceptable, right? So if I have the same identity shared between Azure AD and on domain controllers, there has to be a sync between them that says, I am Trucker both for on-prem and Azure AD. And what we've realized with Key Trust, based on your scale of enterprise deployments and stuff like that, the sync usually takes longer. Longer to a fact that if you were to onboard today, you might not be able to log in the next 5 minutes. Right? It might take somewhere around 30 minutes or to an hour or even longer. So we really needed to address that particular aspect of Key Trust, which was already a simpler model for deployment from certificate trust. So what we have done, gone ahead, and we have also sort of worked with our FIDO protocols and seen, hey, how does FIDO work today and what we can learn from that. And what we have come up is with this hybrid model of trust, which we are calling cloud trust, right? So let's go to Azure AD first. And Azure AD is going to give me a PRT, and I'll cache that, and I'll say, okay, great, I can talk to Azure AD. Now, Azure AD will also give me a partial TGT token. That's my Kerberos ticket. And now I can go to on-prem and showcase, hey, here is the Kerberos token that I got from AAD. Do you recognize this? The domain controller will say, oh, yeah, I know this. You have access to resources, right? So what we have pretty much done is the sync capability that was taking much longer and was blocking users from logging in has now been pretty much removed because of this cloud trust model.
So you're actually simplifying the infrastructure. You're removing some key components like PKI or ADFS in the past, and actually not only simplifying the infrastructure, if I'm correctly understood, but also the user experience, like removing the synchronization time, not only for the initial deployment, but also when it comes to your password changes, for example.
Absolutely. It does not really need to get synced up, right? So you're good to go there. PKI has been a huge pain point for deployments. Everybody understands that. Maintaining certs, rolling certs, certificate authorities, just in general, for you to have that deployed is a huge resource, right?
Yeah. I've seen in the past, indeed, organizations which didn't update their CRL of the root, and then from a certain day, no one was able to to use that credentials anymore to authenticate to file share. So it could cause some big issues.
It's also helping, I think, larger enterprises does have often PKI, for example. But if we have smaller companies or SMB, for example, which want to benefit from Windows 11 for Business, they were required to set up additional infrastructure or on-premise infrastructure. And with this, with Cloud Trust, it seems to be straightforward without the need of all the complexity.
Absolutely. You still need a domain controller, but that's the bare minimum you need, right?
Yeah, you have that anyway when you are hybrid. So this should be it's logical. I can shall I go shortly over it, Ronnie? How it's set up in my lab environment?
I think the audience will be great to show them how that works in practice. So take it from there, I would say, Pim.
Check. Okay.
Show us the money.
Let me share the screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so what I did, and this is I've written a blog about it, which we will attach to the comments below the video. So I won't go in depth detail how you can configure it and set it up because it's explained over there. But the first thing you need to do is make sure the Azure AD Kerberos object is created, which you can create within AD Connect with a PowerShell script. So it's written in the blog, it's written in details, and this is actually the object which is making sure that you can the partial TGT ticket can be signed with and be transformed to a not a partial TGT ticket, but a fully transformed TGT ticket. So this is step one in the process. Now from that point forward, the object gets created automatically within domain controls because you can see it as such thing. And then at that point, you have two deployment methods. So for hybrid joint devices, you can either decide to do that via GPOs, which I wouldn't recommend, because if you're going to use a cloud feature, enable it from the cloud. But let's say you won't have endpoint manager, then this can be a solution for you. In there, you can then make sure that the ADMX files are updated on your central policy store with the latest ones, because in that you will see the use CloudTrust for on-prem authentication setting. You need to set that to enabled, besides, of course, setting Windows Hello for Business to enable. But this is the particular setting which enables CloudTrust for within a GPO. Of course, we have. Oh, this is very nice. Of course, we have the same setting which we can use within Endpoint Manager as well. It's not by default in an identity protection policy yet, or within the global tenant settings yet. So we can see it from here: profile name, Windows Hello for Business, CloudTrust, and this is an OMA URI setting. That's at least the way how I always call it. And in the setting, we can see its passport for work, which is Windows Hello. You need to configure your tenant ID, and then policies, and then use CloudTrust for on-prem out is set to true, turned on at least. So this is the setting which actually turns on CloudTrust. Now, important as well, of course, is besides this is the configuration. So besides this is, of course, that you need to have devices. So either Windows 10 or 11, 21H 2 with the latest build. So I think the update was released half February this year. So you need to be literally actually on the latest builds, or at least one of the latest builds. Oh, and then if you have a Windows 11 device, like which I have in front of me, and you log on with Windows Hello for Business, within the user device registration log, you are able to see CloudTrust for on-prem out policy is enabled and is set to yes. So this actually tells you the system is supporting CloudTrust and has received the policy. Now, biggest advantage is that if you do an enrollment, which I did on this particular virtual machine in this case, which I did lately today, is that I, after the enrollment, instantly are able to access resources without the need of the public key, which is written into the Azure AD, being synced back to the on-prem AD. So if I would lock my machine, for example, I can sign off and sign on, but it takes a long time. And I enter my PIN, and I go to a file share and open a different one. I am instantly able to access my file shares. I get a Kerberos token, which I can also see with KList, and at that point in time, I have access. So, and this is based on the CloudTrust model. The deployment setup is the same as already explained by Prakar earlier for the FIDO2 hybrid setup. It's quite easy to do, and it's, yeah, if you have deployed KeyTrust, please move over to CloudTrust, because it's so much easier in deployment. It's so the user benefit when you deploy laptops, the advantages are there, and they're just for you to take, and don't wait longer. Start at least and with a pilot within your own environment, and then roll out to production, of course.
I think that's a great experience, Pim, and I think you make also a great bridge from this experience, because I can imagine that everyone which already have implemented Windows Hello for Business, what it entails or what it takes migrating from your current deployment model, whether it might be certificate based or key based. Prakar, can you tell us a bit more about what the options are? Are we able to do so? And what are the migration steps?
Certainly. So, as I said earlier, this was aimed at simplifying key trust deployments, right? So this effectively builds on key trust and says, as Pim showcased, create your AD Kerberos object, enable the policy, and you're done, right? So pretty much, if you have key trust model already what you're thinking of, you take 2 more steps and you're done. So moving from key trust to cloud trust is the most simplest transition that we could have provided. If there are feedback, happy to take it, but we think it's easiest. However, for certificate trust, it isn't as a straightforward transition as we would have hoped, primarily because certificate-based authentication also enables certain other scenarios, RDP and certain others as well, by default, right? And key trust never supported those scenarios to work with to start off, and hence there is that gap that still exists. So if you wanted to move from certificate trust model to cloud trust, and if you're okay giving up certain privileges that you have, it's a complicated path, but the path exists. You will have to first deploy cloud trust correctly, and then scale down certificate trust, take down your CAs and everything. Any mismatch in the order, it can throw off your deployments, users will get logged. So the migration plan from certificate trust to cloud trust is not very straightforward. We are trying to address that as we learn more about deployments and how folks are thinking about cloud trust. So yeah, key trust to cloud trust, super simple, 3 steps. Certificate to cloud trust, bit more complicated, needs a lot of nitty-gritties, things to be taken care of. But yeah, I hope cloud trust is the way to go, and we can address those things as well in the future.
Check. I got a last question for you, which I hope you were able to answer. So in the past, we have seen once you eventually logged on with your Windows Hello for Business hybrid credentials or Windows Hello for Business credentials, and you try to RDP to a machine that is by default asking, of course, for a PIN, because you literally sign in with your PIN or face recognition. Now, I do know, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that Cloud Trust is not supported with RDP. So can we assume that the same deployment model applies for RDP as is there now for Key Trust? So basically publishing a certificate?
Yes, I think you have that absolutely nailed on. You deploy a certificate to enable RDP scenarios, and it works the same way how it used to work for Key Trust. It will continue to work the same even if you're on Cloud Trust. So yeah.
Check.
So that's to summarize it, guys. Windows Hello for Business is actually combining both worlds, like combining the best of providing a secure experience as well as an user convenient experience. I would say best of both worlds. If you don't already use Windows Hello for Business or Windows Hello in general, I definitely recommend you to do so. And also what deployment models we do have, and then the migration steps, and also the benefits of going for Cloud Trust. I think that's great to wrap it up, guys. Any other comments for this episode of TechTalk Dudes about Windows Hello for Business Cloud Trust?
My only comment would be go try out either Windows Hello if you're an non-enterprise user. If you're an enterprise user, I hope you're already on Windows Hello for Business. If you're not, please do consider it. And it is just great to have that work for your authentication and identity.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Prakar.
Thank you, Pim and Ronnie, bringing me on. I really want to extend my thanks to both of you, and a great conversation here for Windows Hello for Business and Cloud Trust, really Cloud Trust. So, yeah.
You're more than welcome, of course.
Thanks for having you, and thanks for this Tech Talk dudes. And let's go heading for a passwordless generation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching, and we see you next time.